Okay, hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to go over the green booklet, Acer's green booklet, and we'll be covering the questions in section 1. So as always, I just want to start off with some general advice for section 1. And the first bit of advice is always look for the evidence. There is this belief that section 1, the answer is a gut feeling and something that will just pop out at you from the page. That is not true. You need to make sure that you have evidence from the text to back up the correct answer. And then the second one is always to pay close attention to the wording in the question. There will often be double or triple negatives in the question, or it will ask a very specific thing. And if you read that wrong, if you misinterpret it, then you're going to find the wrong answer. So this is the strategy that I like to take for section 1, which is eliminate the two that are very, very wrong. Then you identify the maybe answer and then you find the correct one. So if you're struggling with section 1 and you're not getting questions right and you don't really know why, maybe the best thing you can do is, instead of looking for the correct answer straight away, do it through a process of elimination. And I will show you throughout these questions where all these answers fall into. Okay, so with all of that said, let's get started. We are going to start with question 1. And this is this is where we get a number of comments about a comment made in the Brisbane Courier Mail. And basically the whole unit, the whole issue in this is about whether we should be using the word settlement or invasion when we're talking about the Europeans arriving in Australia. So question 1 says, according to comment 1, using the term settlement to describe the arrival of the British is. This is quite a simple one. It says according to, so that is your hint that you just take it out of the text. You're not asked to extrapolate or interpret anything. You're literally just taking it out of the text. And that is why the correct answer is D. So D is, it's offensive to Aborigines and Torres Strait Islanders. And there is this quote in the comment that says harmful to a significant segment of students. So those being Indigenous Australians. So that's just pulled straight from the text. I'll go over the others though. So A says an attempt to provoke social disharmony. That's not really relevant. That's kind of relevant for the broader debate that is happening in this unit, but not specifically for that comment. B is preferable to using the word discovered. No, this comment basically argues that settlement and discovered paint the same image. That is one of a positive image of Europeans arriving in Australia rather than the negative image of invasion. And then C says unacceptable to the vast majority of Australians. Now this is one that you probably would have gone for if you didn't pick D, and you might have been tipped off to the phrase significant segment. Just remember, significant segment does not mean vast majority. Significant segment is referencing the Aboriginal and the Torres Strait Islanders. They are not the vast majority. So that is why C is incorrect. Okay, question 2. Comment 2 suggests that the decisive factor when considering whether to use the words invasion or settlement is. So key thing in the question, it says decisive factor. So in other words, the main factor, the biggest factor, the most important factor. There could be multiple factors, but we're asked for the decisive one, the big one. And then we need to compare the words invasion versus settlement. So we're really focusing on the words themselves to answer this question. So the answer is C in green, and I will walk you through it. So let's first eliminate B and D, which are the very wrong ones. So B is reconciliation between truth and tact. That's not really relevant to the question. And same thing with D. How those who are already there view the new arrivals. They're not relevant. So those ones hopefully you can eliminate very quickly. A is the perspective of the historian. Now, this is a little bit tricky because it does talk about perspectives of the past and how our use and terminology changes as like society moves on and perceptions of the past and all that sort of stuff. But this answer specifically mentions a historian, and there is no specific mention of historians in the comment. There are mentions of historical events such like Hitler's occupation, but there's actually no specific mentions of a historian or the occupation of historians, which is why that is wrong. And then the answer is C, which is what those who arrive see themselves as doing. And our evidence for this is the phrase did not see themselves as. So it's referencing saying Governor Phillip did not see himself as invading. And so that's why we need to sort of take that into account. So hopefully that made sense. Okay, question 3. The particular examples of invasion occupation used for comparison in comment 2 seem chosen too. So again, in comment 2, it talks about invasions and occupation, and it references World War II and Hitler and the Nazis' invasion occupation of Eastern Europe, and so it's saying, why is that historical example used? What is the role of that historical example used? So the answer is C, and yes, I know I've spelled Germany wrong. I was trying to quickly do this to get everything out as fast as I could to help you guys out, so there will be spelling errors. But let me just go through them anyway. So A is to draw a distinction between the motives behind invasions perpetrated by left-wing and right-wing authoritarian regimes. So that's wrong, because the word invasion and occupation are both the same motive. Like Hitler invaded and occupied. They're the same thing, and also I think the left wing and right wing are just there to throw you off. So that's why that one's very wrong. D says open up a discussion to include other contexts, blah, blah, blah. So D is basically saying we have a debate around the invasion or settlement or occupation of Australia, and we compare it to World War II because there's also a debate around whether Hitler invaded, occupied, or settled Poland. Look, the answer is no, because there is no valid debate over World War II. Everyone's pretty certain that Hitler invaded Poland. He did not settle there. And the reason I put valid is because there are people that believe otherwise, but no, we're not there to, the role isn't to discuss Hitler's motives or the validity of Hitler's actions. So that's wrong. Okay, B is the tricky one. So remind readers that conquests of the 20th century had their inspiration in long European history of imperialism. Now you might have thought this because, you know, the First Fleet was an example of imperialism and colonialism, and then you're linking it to a 20th century event. But the words invasion and occupation don't do that, because from a historical perspective, people have been invading and occupying long before early imperialism, all the way back to the ancient times. So the words themselves are just words. They don't actually link back to that particular time in history. If it was something more like colonialism, then maybe, because that is a specific thing that happened in that time in history. But those two words themselves aren't doing this. They're not doing the heavy lifting to prove this. So hopefully that makes sense, but it's actually pretty clear in this instance that C is the correct one. Association with Nazi Germany, that I know that's spelled incorrectly, is uncomfortable. So C says associate the words with regimes of modern history from which most Australians will want to dissociate themselves. So I think we would all agree that most Australians do not want to be associated with Hitler and the Nazis and what they did. And by saying, hey, Hitler occupied Poland and Europeans occupied Australia, you're just as bad as them, that's a very uncomfortable position for lots of Australians to be in. And that's kind of what's causing this discourse and this debate. So that is the answer to question 3.